Something has been on my mind since I completed it, and as you probably guessed by the video, it's getting over it with Bennett Foddy. Now, I've never made a video like this before, and I'm not sure if I ever will again. But I just felt I needed to explain why I love this game so much and how it changed me as a person. Getting Over It is one of my favorite games I've ever played. And it's not because of the game itself per se, but more so how the game made me feel before, during, and after my playthrough. Before I started the game for the first time, I've seen bits and pieces of it, but I refused to watch gameplay because I really wanted to challenge myself, and I really had no idea what I was in for. When I started the game, I was welcomed with some wind, a man in a pot, and a hammer. I tested the waters, sometimes quite literally, and began moving forward to my first obstacle in the game, the tree. Quickly, I was greeted by Bennett Foddy's voice and wondered to myself if I would ever get sick of hearing him throughout my gameplay. At this point, I wasn't sure if I was going to beat it, or if it was just another game where the novelty would wear off. I've played games like this before, and if you've ever played QOP, another of Bennett Foddy's games, you'll know the feeling. I trekked on, and I was hit with what is my favorite line in the game.
Starting over is harder than starting up.
Starting over is harder than starting up. This line really hit home with me. Starting over is harder than starting up. My entire life, I've had a problem with repetition. Starting over, doing the same thing twice or more has always gotten under my skin. It was at this point that I knew this game would be hard for me. And getting over it is hard. It's really hard. But there's this funny thing that happens as you play the game. The first tree gives you a bit of trouble, but it teaches you to climb without any inherent risk of falling. Next, you get to some boulders, a stick, an oar, and eventually you make it to the greenhouse. Another lesson that needs to be learned. This house is a nightmare the first time you play through it, but it has a purpose. It teaches you to think outside the box and eventually use your hammer in a different way. It teaches you the pogo jump. I found this to be a recurring theme in the game. Each new area has a new little trick or slightly different way of doing the same thing you've always done, but somehow it always feels different. As I climbed and fell, I was both reassured and mocked by Bennett Foddy, who would often comment on my large falls. But as I climbed, I got better, I gained confidence, and made little progress, and then I would fall again. But in that moment, the slight progress that I made was such a mixed bag of feelings. I had overwhelming excitement and joy, and yet I was terrified of falling and losing my progress. I was terrified of starting over. And then I reached the orange. Oh boy. This is the part of the game where I believe most people will outright quit. It's not because the obstacle is incredibly hard, but it's every time you fall and lose a good chunk of progress. The first dozen or so times you fall, it takes you a while to even climb back up, all to reach the orange and have one more shot. This is where the game nearly broke me, and I'm very glad I didn't quit. I do wish I kept track of how many times it took me, but uh, it was in the many dozens. But every time I had a small success, even an inch of progress, I had a glimmer of hope, of relief, of satisfaction. And the game slowly began to reveal its true self to me, at least how I interpret it. This game is about the journey. It's not about succeeding, about winning, about conquering the game. It's about buying the ticket and taking the ride. It's about appreciating the small successes. It's about controlling your emotions, enduring the pain, celebrating the victories, no matter how small. And it's about failing. It took me a while to realize, but in my mind, I just wanted the game to be over at the time. I wanted to beat it. I wanted that sweet relief of victory. There's a line in the game that again rung true to me. When you first reach the snake, Bennett Foddy says he put the snake in for you to ride so that you don't complete the game. Because you'll feel bad if you do.
You'll feel bad if you win, so I put this snake in for you.
I scoffed at this, knowing I was near the end and I wanted to continue my journey, but he was right. I just didn't know it yet. So, as most people would do, I continued climbing. I climbed the ice wall, I got to the radio tower, my hands were drenched in sweat, my heart was racing, but I knew that I could overcome this. And I did. I beat the game. At first, I was filled with emotion, excitement, relief, glory, and a little later on, a sort of emptiness that followed after. He was right. I felt bad. But not because I beat the game, but because I didn't slow down and enjoy the journey. I didn't appreciate the feelings it made me feel until it was over. Sometimes we take things for granted in our lives and we don't know what we had until it's gone. I know it's just a silly game, but this entire game I was playing to win, and I didn't stop to enjoy it. Maybe that is the point of the game, to overcome adversity, learn to deal with starting over, endure the suffering, eventually conquering it, but maybe it's something else, and at least it was for me. Getting over it made me feel like no other game ever has, and probably ever will again. It made me look back fondly on an experience that initially felt like a negative one, designed to be a negative one. It made me wish I could play it again for the first time, to feel those emotions again. I wanted to be challenged both physically and emotionally, to endure, to accept starting over, to accept repetition, to feel what I felt during this game. Maybe I'm getting too deep, but this game will always have a special place in my gaming heart. One which is hard to put into words, but I really felt like I needed to try. This game isn't for everyone, and most people probably won't experience what I experienced. But either way, I think this game taught me something about myself and it helped me accept that starting over and failing isn't as bad as it seems to be in the moment. That maybe our mistakes in life are just part of the journey. It's about learning, it's about overcoming and continuing to move forward. And in this case, upward. So, yeah, thanks for watching.
I'm going down the road feeling bad. Lord, I'm going down the road feeling bad.